correctly. I became a director this year. And what we actually do is we protect the IP. So the PSF was originally set up as to hold the intellectual property for the CPython reference interpreter, the Python trademark, that kind of stuff. We also fund the, run the infrastructure behind python.org, including bugs.python.org, ht.python.org, all the infrastructure that lets CPython core development happen, as well as the python.org site for the community. We fund conferences and sprints. We're sponsors of PyCon-au. We run a grants program that allows people to apply for grants to do various things for the Python community. We run, as I said, run the PSF infrastructure. And so PyCon US is one of ours. Also one we did recently, if you go to there's a brochure we put together which is basically aimed at more at the executive world, the enterprise world, just explaining what on earth Python is, who uses it, that this is a programming language that people use in the real world, not just something from the internet, even though it is. So that's what the PSF does. What is the PSF? Well, the PSF is basically people. So we've got members from a whole lot of countries. The board of directors, currently 4 countries represented: US, Australia, Germany, and India. And so, yeah, we've basically been trying to expand the PSF to be as diverse and representative of the Python community as a whole. But the problem is, Python community is a global organization. Python community as a whole is extremely global. PSF has historically been very US-centric. And partly this was to do with the way that the PSF grew, which was members had to be nominated by existing members and then voted in by existing members. And if you run your organization like a clique, your organization is going to end up looking like a clique. And so last year there was a proposal to change the membership model to something that we felt was more representative of the values of the community. And so the general aim was to extend the reach of PSF to all Python users, allow all Python users who chose to do so to identify themselves as members of the PSF, and basically make the PSF an organization that was run by the community for the community, rather than having a self-selected group who are basically passing judgment on who got to call themselves a member of the PSF or not. And so as the first part of that, the big change was to switch to a new membership model. I don't really have time to go into all of the details of it. But the basic idea was to have the idea that the basic level of membership in the PSF just represented people's ability to say, yes, I am a Pythonista. That to call yourself a member of the PSF, all you have to do is, I want to be a member of the PSF. That part is basically done. It's been voted into the bylaws of the foundation. Anybody can now go to python.org and sign up as a member. The linking is a bit broken at the moment. It's on my to-do list to go fix some of that. But the sign-up form is there. It's just a little bit hard to find from the main page at the moment. I intended to have that fixed before today, but I didn't get, it's been a busy week. And so that basically gives members access to all the information on the financials and the members mailing list and the members meetings at the various conferences around the world. A bunch of the other voting categories, which we're still getting the infrastructure in place for some of these additional elements. But again, it's basically self-selecting people who are devoting time to the PSF or contributing financially to the PSF activities. Essentially get to vote on the two of the main things is the board of director elections. So we kind of handle the general direction of the PSF, and then also the voting in new sponsor members, that the membership do get to choose which organizations we accept as sponsors. And then the other big thing we're working on is making PSF an organization by the community for the community. And so at the moment, there's a lot of difficulties around coordinating the growth of the global network of PyCon conferences, the growth of Python user groups, and coordinating all those sorts of events, and building work groups around things like PSF infrastructure and all that sort of stuff. And so as part of the new organizational model, we basically want to be able to better recognize all the people who aren't committing code to a Git repo somewhere so it shows up on OpenHub. We wanted a way that we could better recognize the efforts of all those people who run user groups, who run conferences, who contribute just as much to the growth of the Python community as developers do, but perhaps, well, no perhaps, they generally are not recognized as making as huge a contribution as they do because code commits are really easy to track, and so people track them, and then people go, hey, look, we can see who the developers are. But it's all the people who do outreach, all the people who do organization, who make meetups happen. They have a huge impact on the growth of the community and the fact that making the community a fun place to be, a place that's worth being. And so how people can help? Well, keep being awesome is a big part of it. It's like just a lot of what we're doing in the PSF now is we're not really asking people to do anything different. We're just trying to find a way to acknowledge what's already being done. And so this is essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to change the Python Software Foundation to be a better reflection of what the community already is, rather than to impose any kind of massive change on anybody. We just don't have that kind of power anyway, even if we wanted to, and we don't. But the other simple thing is that while we're still working on getting some of the mechanics around voting memberships and work groups in place, as I said, the basic membership stuff is already there. And so please, please, please join us. And so the additional info at python.org/PSF. And thank you, everybody, for coming to PyCon AU. Thank you to the PyCon AU organizers for making this available to everyone. And thank you to Red Hat for donating the talk slot. So.
Yes, thanks again to our platinum sponsors, Red Hat. They've done a huge job in making this conference accessible to as many people as possible, as have the Python Software Foundation. And thanks, Nick, for giving that talk. So it's now time for our Saturday closing lightning talks. If you've not seen things like this before, basically 5-minute talks. We've got about 8 of them tonight on any topic that the presenters choose. We're going to get right into it now. Basically, we need to make sure that things move quickly. So if I start applauding, please join in so that you can't hear the presenter and our next presenter can start. On deck, we have Russell Keith McGee, but up first, I'd like to have an argument, and conveniently, we have Larry Hastings to provide one.
Okay. So, yes, my name's Larry Hastings. I was the release manager for Python 3.4, and I'll be the release manager for Python 3.5. And this is a quick talk to show you a problem that we had in CPython core development and a new tool that we, and by we I kind of mean I, wrote to solve the problem. So let's say that you have your lovely Python program, and you decide to call os.dup2. Which takes 2 arguments, which are both actually integers representing open files. How does that actually work? Well, in the case of dup2, it's a built-in. So what happens is it goes into the Python interpreter, and it goes around and around and around. And it comes out here out of the function called POSIX_dup2. This is a C function. So what we call, this is called a built-in. This is a Python built-in, which means it was written in C as opposed to being written in Python. So what does POSIX_dup2 look like? Well, it's got a doc string, and it's got an external interface. This is the function that implements dup2. It returns a static, it is static, and returns a PyObject star, which is a C type that represents any Python object in the Python interpreter. So ints and tuples and dicts and strings and lists, they're all PyObject stars. So it returns a PyObject star. In this case, I don't remember what it returns. It takes arguments of the module that was defined in, and then these 2 things here, args and kw args. So this is how the arguments get into the function. args is a tuple, and that contains the positional arguments. And then kwargs is a dict, and that contains the keyword arguments. But these are still Python objects. Args is going to contain 2 Python integer objects at this point. And in C, we have our own integer types that are much easier to work with. So how do we convert from Python types into the C types? Well, it's up to every individual built-in function to do this conversion itself. And so this is the beginning of POSIX dup2. And there's all this stuff that has to deal with what we call the process of argument parsing, which is the conversion of objects into native C types. So in Python 3.4, we added a 3rd argument to POSIX dup2 called inheritable. And you have to touch 4 different spots in the code in order to add it. And 4 different spots, it's kind of getting to be a little complicated, and it's actually hard to maintain. And in fact, we got it wrong because there are 5 spots. You also have to touch it in the docstring, and the person who did the work forgot to do it. So every time you add an argument or modify an existing argument, there are 5 spots to touch. Now, we were talking about adding a 6th one because there's no introspection information for built-ins. I don't know if you've ever tried inspect.getFullArgSpec or inspect.signature. Sometimes it works on a function and sometimes it doesn't. And the thing that's defining whether it works or not is whether it was written in Python, where it works, or whether it was written in C, where it doesn't work because we have no introspection information. So if you run inspect.signature on os.dup2, you get a value error thrown at you, no signature found. So we were going to add a 6th place that you had to update. Where this introspection information was going to live. And it just seemed like it was going to be way too much work and way too fragile. So I wrote this new tool called Argument Clinic. What you do is you write a comment in the C file where you're about to define your function. And this comment has special markers at the beginning and end. There's a tool that looks for those. And then you just say, OK, I'm writing functions called os.dup2. Here are the arguments with the C types and with their default values if they have them. They have per argument docstrings, by the way, or per parameter docstrings. And then there's the docstring for the function writ large. And Argument Clinic will generate all of this boilerplate. It'll generate the docstring. It'll generate the method def, which is how you tell Python, I have a function called dup2. Here's the C function to call. Here's the dup2 function itself. And Argument Clinic generates that whole thing with all of the argument parsing inside of it, so you don't have to touch it anymore. And it generates a 2nd function called the impl function, which has all of the types converted for you. And by the way, that 6th place we were talking about is actually hidden at the top of this. You see that dup2 parenthesis $sign module. That's the introspection information that's now passed in through the docstring. It's kind of weird. So if you want to know more about Argument Clinic, it's in PEP 436. And also, the source ships with Python 3.4. It's in the tools directory in tools clinic, it's clinic.py. It's about 4,000 lines of code. That's it. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, Larry Hastings. On deck, we have Katie Miller over this side. But up first, Russell Keith McGee, unleash the yak.
All right, so previously on PyCon AU, last year I gave a talk entitled Tinkering with tkinter. And in that talk, I defended the venerable tkinter GUI widget framework that comes out of the box with Python. As part of that, I made an impassioned plea for tools with a rich graphical user interface to support software development. And to prove my point, I announced Cricket, a GUI tool for running Python test suites. At DjangoCon US last year, I expanded on that and launched the Beware project. Beware is an umbrella project in which I'm hoping to collect a bunch of useful graphical development tools, tools for testing, coverage, debugging, and so on. But since then, I've been a little bit quiet. Well, what happened? I'm still passionate about graphical tools. I've just hit a few road bumps in my usage of TK. It turns out that while tkinter does work out of the box on OS X, it doesn't work out of the box with Ubuntu because Ubuntu packages Python funny. And it doesn't run out of the box with Windows because you need to set a whole bunch of environment variables for TK to know where its libraries are, and every Windows user knows how to set environment variables. And I came across a couple of weird graphical glitches. None of these were deal breakers, but they were mostly just really annoying. What was a deal breaker was that I couldn't find any way to get a modern web view in a TK app. All the example code I could find would allow you to have a fully functional HTML 3.2 browser with no CSS, which is to say not really a web browser at all. Writing a widget from scratch turned out to be a major pain. It involved writing C, it involved writing Tickle, and doing that on multiple platforms, and ultimately ended up being more pain than it was worth given all the other problems that already existed. So I started looking around at my options, and there are lots of options out there, but none of them work out of the box. Qt works nicely, but it's huge, and the Python libraries are in this weird licensing limbo state. WX Windows is really annoying to install. GTK's support for OS X is run X Windows. Kivy does a cross-platform by theming, and I hate themes. So this was becoming my yak. I've got things that I want to do, but I need a widget toolkit that meets my basic requirements. So I decided to start shaving that yak, and today I'm proud to announce Toga. Toga is a cross-platform, 100% system-native, Python-native widget toolkit installable using pip install Toga. I've got it running on OS X, I've got it running on Ubuntu, I've got it run some preliminary support demonstrating that it runs on Windows. It is 100% system native. It doesn't use a theme to pretend it's rendering system native widgets. It uses system native APIs to render system native widgets. A button on OS X is an NS button. On Ubuntu, it's a GTK button. It's accessed using either a native Python API if one's available, or a C-types binding to system binaries if it's not. It's also Python native. Because I'm developing it in and for Python, it means the API feels Python native. So, for example, if you've got a long-running action that's stimulated in response to a button press, most widget toolkits coming from a C background will tell you to spawn a thread or create a callable that can be put into a timer method that will be injected into the event loop. In Toga, you just yield. A long-running event handler just yields to the main event loop. There's no threads or timer callbacks required. And it's a pure Python app. There are no binaries. There is nothing to compile or install. With one very small caveat on Ubuntu with no site packages of virtual environments, the installation process is pip install Toga. So how mature is it? Well, it's only had 6 months of spare time development, but here's a Fahrenheit to Celsius calculator running under OS X. And here's exactly the same user interface from the same code running under Ubuntu. I've done the most work on the OS X widget set, because that's where I spend most of my life. So the widget support there is at the point where I can mock up the full Cricket interface. And the original source of my yak, here's a done web browser written in Toga, about 35 lines of code. It's also got a little bit of documentation, a couple of tutorials and introductions. So if you're interested, you can get details at pyb.org/toga, or come and grab me during the conference and the sprints, or you can get on Twitter at pybeware. Oh, and one more thing. Writing a new GUI toolkit is all fine and dandy, but it really is a bit of a pointless exercise if it doesn't support all the big platforms for today, which means mobile platforms. So I've ported it. Here's a Fahrenheit to Celsius calculator running on iOS. This is a 100% system-native Python application using native OS X widgets on an iPhone. Unfortunately, it doesn't work on Android yet, but what do you want from a 6-month-old yak? If you know Android, or you want to work with Android, or you'd like to see that on Android, please come and talk to me. I want to get this going on as many platforms as possible. Android and Windows are obviously, Windows Mobile are obviously huge ones. I've also got a template project for anyone who doesn't want to use Toga but still wants to use Python on OS X. If you want to see that template project, any more details, please go visit pyb.org/toga or at pybeware on Twitter. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Russell Keith McGee. On deck, we have Josh Dupre. But first, Katie Miller. Please get started.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Hello. Great. So one thing we all know, I think, as citizens of the internet, is that there are people out there who are wrong about stuff. And sometimes it can be hard to figure out how to express our feelings about said people. So as programmers, of course, we can come up with automated solutions to this. So I've created a little app, if I can just flick over here. Oh, sorry, wrong thing. To automate that, so we can generate some nice little insults in the cloud. And the internet's a little bit slow, so it's taking a while. But these are some nice innocuous insults to express how we're feeling. Now, of course, doing this locally isn't much fun, so this is something we might want to actually host. So in order to do that, of course, we want to have maximum scalability so we can insult as many people as possible. And for that, we can use Platform as a Service. So for anyone who isn't familiar, Platform as a Service is the thing in the middle there. So in terms of levels of abstraction, it basically handles everything for you other than your code and the data that it operates on, whereas something like EC2 is in your infrastructure as a service column, and something like Gmail is in your software as a service column. So we're talking about the thing in the middle. For a free book, can anyone give me an example of a platform as a service provider? Heroku, there. Okay. I'm not sure who was first with that, but someone can come and talk to me about that later. So I have a free book on OpenShift, which is another platform as a service that is open source. And I have a bunch of electronic copies of the book to give away on the swag table. Someone could come and get this hard copy afterwards. So OpenShift, as I mentioned, open source project, Apache 2 licensed on GitHub. There's also a public offering of that on openshift.com, which has a very generous free tier. You get 3 gigs of storage and 12 meg of RAM. 1.5 gig of RAM total on the free tier, and then there's also an enterprise version. So you can deploy in a number of ways, GUI if you're into that, or the command line, IDE, blah, blah, blah. Lots of languages supported, including Python and whatever else you like to do. For me, I like Haskell. You can run that on there too. So to quickly just show you how you deploy an app. So on the command line, you can do something like this. So creating an app, it's called Insulter. I'm saying I want it to have Python 2.7 and Postgres. And I'm referencing a Git repository where I've actually got the code already created, and the -s on the end is what's going to make it auto-scalable. So out of the box, this is going to scale. You can see it's set up the DNS. You can SSH to this. There's the app code. It's cloned the repo for me. If I SSH in, I can, if it catches up, import some data to my database, exit out, and that's what's given me my app here. Oh, no internet, but oh, there we go. And that's how we get our insults. So yeah, if you want to know more, come see me at the booth for a free ebook. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katie Miller. So on deck, we have Nick Farrell over this side. But first, Josh Dupre with Node.hs.
Ding dong. Hello. My name is Elder Josh, and I would like to talk to you about implementing the best developer framework ever, Node.hs. It's something that I wasn't planning on. It's something I wasn't planning on implementing so soon, but it was inspired last night by some tweets by Chris. I asked him what was up. He basically said he didn't know, so I said maybe he should ask the presenter if he knew about Node.hs. But of course, Node.hs doesn't exist, so I have to implement it. And my plan was to implement it in this lightning talk. What is Node.hs? Well, it combines the sheer mathematical abstract power of Node with the pragmatism and shallow learning curve of Haskell. There's just 2 problems with this. I can't implement this for you today. The 2 reasons are this. One is I'm a software engineer, hired professionally as a software engineer, so I don't know Node. And 2 weeks from now, I'll be graduating with my PhD in abstract algebra, so I don't know the first thing about monads. So what can I implement for you? Lightning. This is a lightning talk. Let's get into it. So first, I need to make some file somewhere, and okay. So how am I going to implement my lightning? I'm going to have a Pygame. I need some display. What else? Draw. Yeah, it's got a events and time, I think. Need some random events coming in. Let's see. I need to choose some stuff. I need some random numbers. I know, I'll use a von Mises distribution. And what else do I need? Some math. I need some trigonometry. Yeah, that'll do. So let's init Pygame. Let's set up the clock. Let's set the size of the screen. Let's do some other junk. Okay, I'm going to make the step size 5 pixels, and I'm going to make kappa. That's going to be how wiggly the lightning is going to be too. And I'm going to make a 1% chance of forking the lightning. And now we need to obviously make some lightning, so it's one with a class. I should do it really good, but I'm not. If I want more lightning, okay, so we've got a set of paths, and if the path is now outside the bounds of the window, then I just ignore it. Otherwise, I just pretend it's going to go down for a while. Otherwise, let's see, I'm going to take some other point. What is this other point? I've got to figure out what direction the lightning's going, and if that parameter is not in the right range, then I have to correct it. Now I get my random number, I figure out where the step's going to go, and then I step. Cool. And finally, if
if I beat my 1% odds of like forking, then I'll fork. And this is just going to append another path, which was the start of the current path. Anyway. Okay, now let's see. Drawing this is going to be a simple bunch of lines. So it's going to look like this. This is not the best way of doing it. Oh God, what am I doing? Okay. Now it's going to do some like mainy stuff, except not in the main, because who cares about like coding correctly? Let's see. Oh, that's events. Yeah. Okay. So if I quit out of Pygame, then I want to quit. Just going to break out a loop. If I type the escape or Q rather, then I should quit as well. Otherwise, if I type reset, yeah, that ought to do. And now I can just start making some lightning and animate it. So fill the screen with black, draw the lightning, flip the display, and that's the end of it. Cool. So let's run this. Boom. Thank you.
And clearly more useful than most monads. Thanks, Josh Dupre. So on deck, we have Ian Grunnett over this side. But first, we have Nick Farrell on this side.
Hello. I can't type anything like as quickly as him, so I'm using pre-prepared slides.
Neither can he.
So, a couple of weeks ago, slightly beer-infused idea was, I was typing away Python 3, everything was looking good, and then I got to need to use some old library, PyZero plugin for doing some API, OAuth, so on. And I realized it would have been really good if they'd used 6. 2.3 compatibility means everyone's happy, but they hadn't. And I was sitting on the outside, too lazy or too hard to get in there and actually fix 6 itself, or fix PyZero to bring it up to work from my native Django Python 3 situation. So I thought, I'm just going to fix this in general. So what I've made is something that allows you to, from within Python 3, connect to a Python 2 instance and run any Python 2 code. Doesn't matter about syntax or anything like that. As long as it runs in Python 2, you can use it from your Python 3 environment painlessly. All Boto S3 calls, the PyZero plugin, and anything else, I haven't run into any trouble yet. So very briefly, sucks. Yeah, so the way you use it, set up your Python 2 virtual env, first of all. So in Python 2 land, you'll create, well, you'll install whatever you want. In this example, I installed Boto, which the S3 bit doesn't work properly in Python 3, so it's a good example. Throw it there. Then simply have an environment variable which tells the system where you are. Fire up your Python 3. Import my sucks module, so pip install early on, yep. Then you can create your modules just like, almost like you would from Python 2. This sucks to use, gives you a proxy wrapper, because obviously it sucks to use the Python 2 code. Then you can operate on it just as though using the identical semantics to if you were in Python 2, but without having to downgrade the rest of your stack just for this one package. Works pretty well. I will mention even exceptions. If exceptions bubble up, they will be propagated across, and an exception of the same name, different object, will be available in your Python 3 namespace. Couple of little tricks. You have to import the package. You can't import a sub-module of that package, but that's not a big deal. For a semi-live demo, I will very quickly, that's my Python 2 virtual env I've made just before, just installed Boto. My Python 3 virtual env just has sucks in it. I have a teeny tiny program, which is basically that one before, where I'm going to end up trying to create a bucket. And when I execute that in my Python 3 space, it should have a network. Oh, there we go. And we have an exception raised. As you can see, it's an S3 response error. So it's actually within the sucks namespace, but it gives you the same name, and the message is propagated across. So it's actually running in Python 2. You don't have to worry about that. In theory, you could do the same thing You could use this not just for working with Python 2 legacy code. If you really wanted to, you could have a PyPy virtual env, say, and from your nice clean Python 3, go and do something nasty over there without polluting the rest of your code. That's it. Enjoy. It's on PyPy if you want to use it.
Okay, so on deck we now have Andrew Jones on this side, but please welcome Ian Grunert.
Hi guys, my name's Ian. I'm a developer at Atlassian, and I'm here to talk to you about Git Nodes because I think it's pretty neat. So what are Git Nodes? Git Nodes allows you to add, remove, or read nodes attached to objects without touching the objects themselves. I thought that was kind of interesting. How does that work in Git? So hands up, who has some idea of how Git works under the covers? Smattering of hands. I'm going to try and explain it to you in a couple of minutes. So Git is a content addressable database. So it has the concept of content and then keys that map to that content. But the keys are a SHA-1 hash of the content itself. So if you try to mutate the content, then the hash changes and the key changes and it just disappears if anyone's trying to point at it. So on top of that, they build 3 types of objects: commits, trees, and blobs. So we'll have refs, which is just a way to point at a particular commit hash. That commits then point at a tree, that points at a blob or other trees, and then inside that blob is your content. So if you use the command line, you can have a look at how this actually works. So you can use the cat file command to be able to have a look inside objects, and you can see here there's this tree object. And you can go inside there, and you can see all these files, which is kind of nice. And then inside this README one, hey, look, you can cat that and get the content. So that's kind of interesting. But how can you add additional stuff onto a commit, like a note, without changing the contents of the commit? So this is how it works. You have, alongside your regular commit graph, you have this second commit graph. You have under the ref notes geostats, it points at a commit. And that commit graph is completely separate from the main commit graph. And inside those are a series of files. So it points at a tree, which is a series of other trees. And you basically cat together the directory names and the file names, the blob names, together. And that name points at a commit in the original graph. And inside there, you shove your note, which I think is really pretty neat. It's basically, yo, dog, I heard you like Git, so I put a Git in your Git so you can commit on commits. I thought it was pretty cool. So if you want to find out more about Git Nodes and how you can use it to solve some of the problems that you have with getting information into your repository and sharing it amongst your CI systems and with your local stuff, then come to my talk tomorrow. Thanks.
Certified Git experts, Ian Grunert. Nicholas Farrell Andrew Jones on this side, and on the other side will be Graham Dumpleton. Your time starts now.
Hello, my name's Andrew Jones. I'm here to talk about Datacom's DataComp, which is a hackathon, internal hackathon run by Datacom. Just a disclaimer, I don't work for Datacom at all. This is not an ad for them. This is just something cool I observed. So recently I had the pleasure of flying over to New Zealand and observing Datacomp on behalf of Medibank. So as I said, it's an internal hackathon run by a New Zealand company called Datathom, and they're a huge IT company with approximately 800 developers. So Datacom employees are encouraged to attend. So why does a big business run a hackathon? There's several reasons. It fosters company culture and spirit, completely destroys corporate silos. The teams are participating cross-functional teams, so it's not just developers, it's marketing, business people, UI people, designers, it's all. So yeah, that's absolutely silo destroying for them. And it gives Datacom a fantastic innovation point to talk with their customers. So if a customer comes up to them and they want to hear about what they're doing in innovation space, Datacom points to Datacomp and says, this is what we're doing for innovation. And it's also a fantastic way for large organizations to discover talent. They said they had a guy who just sat in the corner quietly, and they just either thought they was just, you know, an average person, but then he was absolutely shined in Datacomp, so they discovered him. It's a bit sad that big business has to do that, but that's a reality when you have 7,000 employees. And benefits contestants, so it's a chance to do something fun, chance to skill up on something new, and an absolute fantastic sense of accomplishment. So why am I telling you guys about an internal hackathon? It's very easy to get cynical about innovation in big business. Having worked in a big company myself, I've experienced this firsthand. So Datacomp is an example of a large company do something fun and potentially innovative. I plan to run something similar at Medibank, so that's very much at the planning stage at the moment. And here's why I'm telling you. I encourage you to do something similar. If you're not having much traction, we're getting Google like 20% time, or not having any fun with innovation in a large company, maybe a hackathon could work for you. It might not have to be a whole weekend. It could just be a couple hours. So this year's theme was the Arduino microcontroller plus Grow Starter Kit Plus. So there's basically part list. And the rules were they must use an Arduino controller and at least one sensor. Also, the presentation must include a business case, so it can't just be fun hacking around with a robot in the corner. There must, you have to like make a toy to sell. So I mean, there's a bit of business focus on it. The format, it kicked off 4 p.m. Friday, presentations were 12 p.m. Sunday, and then, well, it's all wrapped up at about 5 p.m. Sunday. And some contestants work around the clock overnight, which is pretty incredible since they're giving up their weekend. Okay, so one of the projects was a smart stove. So they had a proximity sensor wired up to a stove, and the idea was fire prevention. So if the stove was unattended for a certain amount of time, this would automatically switch off the stove. And they also had the Arduino alcohol sensor, which was kind of fun. So they dipped it in that bottle of booze you see there. And the idea was try to prevent drinking and cooking. Good luck with that. Another project was a smart shoe. So the idea of this was to try to wire it up into something like Runkeeper and to try to give you real-time feedback if your running style was bad. It's particular relevance for me. I'm always feeling like I'm flirting injury jogging. So that was very cool. They didn't really get it working, but it was cool to see. It was an awesome idea. Another project was a smart lock. So this one used the Bluetooth low energy device, and the idea is if your mobile's in proximity to your door, it'll automatically unlock your door. There's also stuff like keypad override if your phone ran out of batteries. And they also had it wired up to the cloud.
1 minute.
Also had it wired up to the cloud, so if you had a tradie coming over, you can remotely unlock your door for them. So that was a cool idea. So a bit of logistics, 90 contestants, 11 teams. There was hotels needed because they had to get people from all over the New Zealand, and all meals and snacks were provided, and they were very much looked after. So they had a candy bar, and I believe cocktails were getting poured at one stage during the evening. They also had this guy wander around through the whole competition just serving beers and dishing out snacks and fruit, and there was like head and shoulder massage people walking around as well. So that was very cool to see. So thank you.
Andrew Jones, everybody. And for our last lightning talk of the day, we have something in defense of mod whiskey. I'm very interested. Please welcome Graham Dumpleton.
I actually did this as a lightning talk yesterday. It was very well received by some people, so I'll give it another go with more people here. But I'm going to go a bit quicker today because I want to put a few more things in from what I just did.
You've already spent 15 seconds.
Sorry. Okay. So I've got a Django application here. Okay, it's running. But I want to run mod whiskey with it. And we know how hard that is to set up, don't we? No, let's see how hard. Sorry, I'm not playing it against Sam here. So, how long does it take you to install mod whiskey? Hour, 2 hours? I only got 5 minutes, so we'll see how that goes. Oh, it's working. Okay, that's a good start. That's actually run up a full Apache with a pre-configured setup. Oops. Just to make sure that here's a hello world program. Oh, I've got an error in it. That's a good one. Oh, I know why it's at. We'll get back to that one. But it does work, believe me.
We trust you.
Oh, I'll prove it. Yeah, we'll fix it up the error. I put it in there by mistake earlier to try something. Yeah. It works. Okay, trust me. Okay, but I want to use Django. So I've got Django here. Settings. Let's put mod whiskey server inside the Django installed apps. Let's put static root. I'm going to collect static for Django. Yes. I'm now going to run run modwhiskey management command for Django. I have now running on Django. Automatically brought in all the statics, set up all the aliases in Apache to host those static files. Let's get rid of that one. But what else? We got more. I'm sure we've got more here. Now, we're in a development environment, okay? I want to make, so I can type it right. Yesterday I got this wrong and I got a bit of bagging on it on Twitter by someone. So, let's go back here. So, I've gone to the top level perf. I've put reload on changes. So what I can now do is I can go here and modify my code. Let's actually enable this. Go and read that. That has gone and actually restarted Apache. Oh, I've got a mistake here. This is a mistake I took out of the other one, which was meant to be in here. So let's do something interesting here.
Definitely reloaded.
Now, I don't know if you've heard of it. There's a debugger out there called WDB. I don't see it mentioned much, but I actually find it quite interesting. So if I go there now, great, I've done something wrong. I bet you it's Django interfering with this. Let's go back and put the error in here, shall we? Oh, wrong command, didn't I? Let's try that one. Okay, I don't know what I broke on that one. Let's move on. Okay, next one that we can do. Let's go back to modwhiskey. Let's get rid of that one. Let's try this one. Now, I don't know whether you've used New Relic. You should. It's going to take me 5 minutes just to type this. I need to play it again, Sam. And I've got that wrong too, because this has to be... Yeah, I'll get there. Okay, anyway, there is inbuilt support for modwhiskey. Not modwhiskey, for New Relic. But there's interesting two parts to the New Relic stuff. Now, I'm not going to talk about the main part of New Relic, which is the monitoring of... that's not going to fit as it is. Which is monitoring of the Python web application. One of the other things I've been working on is statistics for performance monitoring of Apache and mod.wsgi itself. Now, in this particular case, I am reporting it into New Relic because they have a thing called Platform, which allows you to just do charting. It's actually a free product. So I'm making use of this free product. But I've got all this cute stuff in modwhiskey now for actually getting all this information out of Apache about the status of requests, the processes, what they're doing. I can find out this process churn, how much you've screwed up your Apache configuration and so on.
Please thank Graham Dumpleton, who tomorrow will be teaching us how to configure modwhiskey. That is the last of our lightning talks for today. There will be a sign-up board in the same place as today's was, but tomorrow. But up next, we have the dinner. The dinner is in the Boulevard room down the far end of this level of the convention centre, and I believe doors are opening at 6, but I can't see an organiser to confirm that, so take it as given. If the doors don't open, they probably open later than 6. Thank you very much for coming along, and see you all tomorrow morning.